News Radio, the voice of vaping. In each show, we share the latest about regulations and things you need to know, plus upcoming conferences and fests, along with interviews with the movers and shakers in this fabulous vape space. Are you looking to get into this ever-expanding marketplace? Do you want to master this industry? Listen up as Norm Bauer, the Vape Mentor, shares it all. And here's your host, Norm Bauer.
Hey, everybody. This is Norm Bauer with Vape News Radio, the voice of vaping. And if you are new to the show, thanks for joining us. This is numero 40. Sorry, guys, I am not bilingual, but this is show number 4. We are now doing it twice a month, as you may have been following. And I noticed that our downloads, our viewership is growing. We should be hitting 1,000 downloads this month. And for all of you who have listened to the show, I thank you very sincerely. We thank you very sincerely, and all we ask is just share the news, guys, because this show is not about us. It's not about Vape News Magazine. It's not even about the radio show. It's really about you. It's about educating you. It's about edifying you. It's about supporting entrepreneurship in this very challenging vape space. And again, if you have been listening to the show, section number 1, which is what we're in right now, is really just kind of like, here's what the latest haps are. Here's what's going on right now. Conventions, conferences, anything new with the FDA, some other things that are going on. Going to share a personal story about fighting City Hall, because it sounds like a cliche that you can't fight City Hall, but au contraire, you actually can fight City Hall, and I'll get into that in just a moment. And what's interesting is that here we are in June, and we're about 4 weeks out from my first-year anniversary of the first time I walked into a vape shop in Newport Beach, California, and I said, what the hell is a vape shop? And from there, it started a whole series of events, and all I can tell you is that I have passion for what I do. I have passion for supporting my clients, and VapeMentors.com is growing exponentially. And for all of you who have been clients and will be clients in the future, or listen to the show, or read my blogs, or read the articles in Vape News Magazine, thank you, thank you, thank you ever so much. So let's talk about some events going on. Kind of interesting. The number of events is certainly growing exponentially. It seems like maybe 2 years ago when they first started, they were very sporadic. Now you have regional events that are cropping up everywhere, and truly I can't keep track of them all. I've been to Vegas, I've been to Chicago, and coming up in a few days in Los Angeles, I'll be speaking at a unique hybrid, and it's all about vape affiliates. And it's kind of interesting. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the affiliate way of making money, dude, seriously, you got to get on this bandwagon, because if you have a site that's generating massive traffic, or even if it's generating decent traffic, this is a great way to add to your revenue stream. And in my previous history, when I had a radio show on back in the early 2000s until 2008, we had a very, very large affiliate network, and it was a very substantial cash cow. And so I'm going to be speaking in Los Angeles. So for those of you who are hearing this now, I'm sorry, but the event is already over, but I'm going to report to you exactly what happened. Because the truth is that as much as I like to teach, I really, really enjoy learning, and I do not claim to understand everything about technology or about social media. I understand business strategies better than almost anyone you're going to find in this industry, but the truth is that when it comes to the mechanics, the implementation, hey, you know what? I'm a baby boomer, going to be reaching over that 6-decade figure in just a couple of weeks, so some things are just, you know what? I just don't have the patience for all the technology. So again, I'm going to be speaking in Los Angeles. Meanwhile, on the other side of the country, in Miami, our associate, Matt Schrammel, who is the editor of Vape News Magazine, and I guess you're going to call him my boss and certainly my friend, he's going to be covering an event in Miami on June 6th through 8th. So again, by the time you hear this, sorry guys, it's all going to be over. But if you go to Vape News Magazine, you will see a calendar that is hopefully as up to date as probably one can be on all the different events. And I get people asking me on a regular basis, should I go to any one of these festivals or conferences or conventions or whatever you want to call it? And my answer is, hell yeah. I mean, seriously, they're a lot of fun. People in the space are really just a lot of really awesome people. And what's interesting is that no one claims to be an expert in everything. There's certain certainly people who are experts in the juicing, and certainly experts who are, really awesome with putting the mechanicals together and building stuff. And there's others that are experts in certain things. But you know what? We all learn together. We all live together. And I'm a huge, huge believer in collaboration. And in a couple of weeks, I'm going to be having a special report that I put together that is kind of a scathing indictment of some of the jealousy that I see in the vaping industry, where it's like, hey, you know what? This is my sandbox and you can't play in it. And that really bugs the crap out of me. And hopefully we're going to see that happening less and less, because there is no question about it. The industry is going through a change. And that is exactly what I'm going to be speaking of in Los Angeles. I'm talking about the changing demographics of the marketplace, the B2B and the B2C. What you've seen over the last couple of years, I'm going to make a prediction you will not see over the next couple of years in the future. Because what happened is we had a lot of people with passion and entrepreneurship, and a lot of the millennials, a lot of the Gen Ys who were starting it. And the truth is that a lot of them didn't have any business acumen or business experience. And, the market is very forgiving. There's a lot of business to be had out there. And so sometimes you don't need to get everything right to capitalize or be profitable. But the truth is that market is changing. And so for those of you who do not have a strategy, who do not understand your market, who do not understand yourself, you're going to be in deep shit. I'm going to say that. You're going to be in deep shit, because, the truth is that the market is being infringed upon, but not in a bad way, in a very good way, with people who are older, they're smarter, they have experience, and you know what? You either play in their sandbox, or you are going to get buried in the sand. So anyway, that's enough of the soapbox thing. I'm going to talk about the World Health Organization, because for those of you who don't follow the news, I absolutely encourage you to do so. What I do is I put on Google Alerts every day. I get an alert with everything that has vape or vaping, e-cigs or e-cigarettes in it. So obviously the number of Google hits that I get has been growing pretty exponentially. It's on a consistent growth. It's not doubling like it was for the first couple of months, but every day I probably see 20 references on a worldwide level of any incidents that is discussing any one of those four things. And there was a really, really interesting article that came out a few days ago, and I'm actually going to be talking about it with our special guest, who we're going to talk in section 2. His name is David Collins, and he's the owner of California Vapor Company here in San Diego. But the World Health Organization, which is, listen, guys, they are like the big power movers in the world when it comes to health and public welfare and public being and what have you. And what they're doing is that they are basically encouraging people to ask the right questions before you have a knee-jerk reaction. Politicians and legislators and mayors and city council people and all of you folks in power or perceived power, before you start thinking that you need to throw out the baby with the bathwater, take a look at the mechanics, take a look at some of the studies that have been done, because, the truth is that, yes, there are some questions in the industry, and yes, there are some things that aren't fully resolved, but when you look at it from a very basic standpoint, when you ask the question, is vaping or e-cigarettes better than tobacco? The answer is an unmitigated hell yes, absolutely. And so the truth is that this whole thing with the moratoriums is really, really bothersome. And as I've spoken about before, is that the cities are just kind of copycatting each other in a very, very negative way. They're coming from a very, liability-averse position, and they just don't want to be, putting their butt on the line. And, when a city council like Los Angeles goes 11-1 on putting a moratorium, you can bet that not every one of those people wanted to put that moratorium on, but in the public eye, very few of them will ever admit that. But behind closed doors, I've had those conversations behind closed doors. A lot of politicians really don't take issue with it, but they're really just kind of protecting themselves and protecting their cities. So I'm going to share with you a story, because, we learn by stories, and here's the way this went. Is I have a client here in Orange County that has a kiosk. Again, this is a kiosk in one of the major cities here in Orange County. And he's actually only the second person in a very significantly large city that has the ability to sell vaping or vapor products. And so I helped them put their strategy together. They put together a gorgeous kiosk. They're right outside the food court in a very significant high-traffic mall, and everything is fine. And then suddenly they are asked to fulfill what they call a conditional use permit, called a CUP. Now, for those of you who are in cities who don't have a CUP, good for you. But for those of you who have some type of permitting process that forces the business owners to provide some type of an additional proof or validation that they have a business that should be in that city, that's what a conditional use permit is. So what ended up happening is that I went to the last city council meeting because they were actually reviewing a statistics or a report from another city that I was very familiar with here in Orange County. And so the question came up in city council meeting, when is a conditional use permit required? And the answer from the back of the room from the administrators was, well, traditionally speaking, we have the right to ask for a conditional use permit when a vape store is also a lounge. So I'm going to let that drop for a second, because what the hell is a lounge? Can anyone tell me? And again, there's a special report on my website at VapeMentors.com that asks that question, what the hell is a lounge? And so they have a very loose definition of what a lounge is, but where it stands right now is the city has the right, if they deem an e-cig store or a vape store to be a lounge, they have the ability, they have the right to ask for a conditional use permit. So what really kind of put me on this bandwagon here is I get a note from my clients who have this kiosk, and they are now being asked to put together a conditional use permits. Hello? First off, they're not even a retail store with a storefront. They are not a brick and mortar. They're a mobile store on 4 wheels, and under no stretch of the imagination would they consider to be a lounge. So what's happening? Well, as I'm recording this today on June 2nd, I'm going to city council meeting, and man, I got my 6-gun loaded with bullets. I've got all kinds of good stuff that gives protection to the owner of the kiosk. I've got all kinds of things from including the landlord. The landlord of this mall is one of the largest landlords in the entire country. They own hundreds, if not thousands, of malls and different retail establishments all over the country. And you know what? They are actually asking my client who has this kiosk to enter other malls. Hello, that means that they like the business. And when I look at the fine print of this particular city of when they require a conditional use permit, in addition to being required when a city is deemed to be, when a business is deemed to be a lounge, they also can ask for a conditional use permit when they believe that a business is, and this is a quote, is considered to be obnoxious and intrusive on the surrounding businesses. So that really pisses me off because, here one of the largest landlords in the entire nation gives these guys prime location, prime real estate right outside the food court. And in addition, they are also asking them to go into other malls and give them primary positions there too. So if you follow the logical sequence here, would a multi-billion-dollar landlord ask a kiosk in granted a very controversial space to go into other locations if they consider this business to be obnoxious and irritating? Seriously. So tonight, I'm real excited. I got my battle armor on, man. I am loaded up like the Terminator, and I'm going to go in there. I've got 3 minutes. I've got 180 seconds to speak for my client, and you know what? I think that we're going to prevail because here's the problem. If we don't fight it, and for any of you out there who are listening or ever face this challenge, if you don't fight it, here's the risk that you take. If we go ahead and submit this application for a conditional use permit and spend the $1,500 or $1,200 or whatever it costs, and they deny it, you know what? There's no recourse. We are out of business. The kiosk that they just spent thousands of dollars to create, thousands of dollars to private label and private brand, everything that they sell on that kiosk, that is now out the window. That is now closed. So again, do not go down without a fight. And for those of you out there who aren't sure if your city allows vaping, please check it out before you plan on opening a store. I have talked to probably 24 city council people or zoning boards or permit departments or licensing department. Every city kind of has a different category for it. But some cities, you know what? They basically say, here, give us your money for a permit, done deal, end of story. Some of them it's like, well, we allow them, but it has to be reviewed, and they just kind of take a wimpy approach to it. And so, just be careful before you go ahead and make plans and get a location before you find out if, in fact, the city's going to give you flack from it, and make sure you do your due diligence. So anyway, this is the end of Section 1. Sorry if I droned on a little bit, guys, but I thought that all this information was important and valuable, and I hope you agree as well. When we come back in Section 2, we've got David Collins. He's going to be sharing with us some interesting observations. For instance, what happens when you have a large employee base that smokes? Well, first off, they have to take their smoke breaks because otherwise they're not going to get anything done. And so he's going to share with us some of the results that he's found by converting these tobacco smokers into vapors. And here's what's nice, too. It ended up dropping his insurance rates. So for those of you who have companies that are involved in vaping, or if you're not involved in vaping, or if you know people that have businesses where there's a lot of smokers that work there, please come back for Section 2. You are listening to Vape News Radio, the voice of vaping. Paul, take us out with some upbeat music.
You've been listening to Vape News Radio with your host, the original, the only Vape Mentor, Norm Bauer, right here on OCTalkRadio.net.